Welcome to the Safety Map podcast. I'm Alyssa Decker, founder and developer of the Safety Map framework, and this is where we talk about how safety, not performance, is the foundation of healing. We're talking about healing that goes beyond coping skills and into structural change. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to episode 2 of the Safety Map podcast. Today we're talking about why calm is not the same thing as safe. In other words, just because your body feels calm does not necessarily mean that you are safe. And it's also true in reverse. When you are safe does not necessarily mean that your body will be calm. Let's get into it. So in the first episode, I said your body makes sense, and it absolutely does. One of the ways this can get really confusing, however, is that we often confuse feeling calm with being safe. So I want to address the flip side of that first. How is it that you could be safe and not feel calm? Okay. Now, in general, when you are safe, you will feel calm. When you are safe, your body can return to a regulated state. It can return to what we call a ventral vagal state. This is the state of where your nervous system is relaxed, it is open, it is not experiencing active threat, and things feel pretty calm. But when you arrive there for the first time, when you are in the presence of safety for the first time, when you experience relational safety in a way that you have not before, that will feel unfamiliar to your body, to your nervous system. In other words, when you begin to experience safety for the first time, your body has no reference point. Your body does not know that this is safe until it has some time, some data to verify that it is in fact safe. Anything unfamiliar is going to feel unsafe to your body at first. So that's why I say it is possible to be safe and not yet feel calm, because your body has not yet gotten used to the idea that this thing called safety can be trusted, that it can relax into this thing called safety. And your body may not even immediately connect this is safe with your current experience, particularly for those of us who have not grown up in a safe environment. Our bodies did not develop that baseline for what safety feels like early on in our lives. Now, let's talk about how you can be calm and not necessarily be safe. So, have you ever been to a social event, a party, or a weekend gathering, or even a work event, and you left that particular event thinking, well, that went pretty well, or maybe that wasn't as bad as I expected, and yet you're exhausted. And yet you feel like, oh, I feel like I just ran a marathon, even though that went well, even though all of the things that I was concerned about didn't happen. Aunt Sally didn't say anything rude. Uncle George didn't start any arguments. Bobby never got into politics, right? The things that you had braced for or anticipated prior to the event didn't actually happen, and yet you were depleted and exhausted after. What happened there is your body consumed a tremendous amount of energy in the bracing, in the anticipation of the thing that it predicted was likely to happen. And it does that. It goes through that preparatory protective process, whether or not the bad thing, the negative outcome happens. So when we go through those things and we wind up exhausted, it's because our body did the work to prepare for the thing, even if the thing never happened. That's why you can be exhausted. For those of us who are really skilled at regulation techniques, who have learned how to calm our bodies down, oftentimes we will calm ourselves prior to that event, in the middle of that event, with deep breathing exercises, with bodily awareness exercises, such as feeling your feet planted on the floor, with exercises that change your posture, like dropping your shoulders, like releasing your abdominal muscles, being aware of what is happening somatically in your body. And so what can happen is we create this dichotomy where our bodies have been trained to relax using these regulation techniques, but underneath it all, your system is still braced for the threat, just like we described a minute ago. And sometimes we get these things a little mixed up. In other words, we think, I was calm. I managed to keep it together. I didn't get dysregulated. I remembered my deep breathing. And we associate those things with safety. We might think, hey, that party was actually pretty safe. My body stayed calm through it. But the absence of threat or the presence of calm does not mean safety. It means you use techniques to regulate your body, to produce a feeling of calm, in spite of the fact that safety was not present. And even though the threat never materialized, Bobby never started talking about politics, the threat was present because your body knew that thing has a high likelihood of happening. So just because it didn't this time doesn't mean the threat was not present. Now, when I talk about using techniques to calm your body or regulate your body, I often use the term override to describe this process. In other words, your body is sending you a signal that says, a threat is on the horizon, a threat is approaching, we're detecting the probability of something unsafe happening. And your body gives you a response that correlates with that. In other words, your body says, this threat is on the horizon, we're going to respond in this particular way in order to prepare to defend against or to meet that threat. When we use regulation techniques, what we are doing is we are overriding those signals that your body is sending you. We create a sense of calm by changing or altering the signals your body is sending you. Is that a bad thing? No. Sometimes we need that to increase our capacity to function in those social situations. When we use override to achieve that calm, it feels like calm. It feels like safety, but underneath, your system is still braced. The energy is still being depleted. The resources are still being applied to the threat detection. And now we're applying additional resources to maintaining that override or that state of calm. One of the ways you can tell if your body has regulated naturally all on its own because the threat has subsided versus I've used techniques to calm my body is that when your body does it on its own, it does not require constant attention and energy to maintain that state of calm versus when I use override techniques to calm my body, I can achieve a calmer feeling in my body for a certain amount of time, but I have to constantly work to maintain that. It requires consistent energy expenditure to stay there. Now, last week we talked about the definition of safety. Safety means no meaningful threat exists to my aliveness, identity, or connection and I am able to express myself without rejection or disconnection. So when we apply that definition of safety and we connect it back to our party example, even though you were able to maintain a calm disposition, you were able to lower your heart rate, you were able to lower your breathing, you were able to relax your muscles and achieve a state of calm at that party, your experience did not qualify as safety. It was calm, achieved through override in an unsafe situation. And again, that is not a bad thing. That is a very useful thing because your techniques gave you the opportunity, the capacity to stay present, to engage, to connect, to move through that party successfully on a social level, right? But it does come at a cost. And that cost is often later the exhaustion and the depletion catches up with you. I want to talk for just a minute about how your body forms those threat predictions. How does your body decide what is safe and what is not safe, or what is a threat and what is not? Well, your body is using data that it has collected throughout your entire life. And as you have moved through your life, your map has been encoding over and over and over again. This is safe. This is not safe. If I do this, I'm met with connection. If I do that, I am left alone, or I'm isolated, or I'm disconnected. And then we have on our map experiences that cause what I call ruptures. Little tears, sometimes big tears, in our map that kind of interrupt the scan. They function as markers of things that happen to us that were unsafe without defense. In other words, this thing happened to me. It was unsafe, and I was unable to defend myself in this moment. This is very different from this thing happened and I successfully defended against it, or this thing happened and someone stepped in to protect me. Ruptures happen when something unsafe happens to us and we are without defense. So these ruptures can happen through abandonment, they can happen through violent attacks, they can happen through violation of our personal space or our boundaries or our autonomy. They can happen when we are punished relationally for not living up to someone else's expectations. Sometimes these ruptures are obvious. They're massive events, traumas that absolutely get our attention and change everything about our lives in a moment. But sometimes they are tiny little things that happen that we may not even realize happen over time, but our map encodes, I was in this moment, in danger. I experienced a threat without defense. These events, whether they are dramatic or whether they are little, cause ruptures in our safety map. And these ruptures have impact on those threat scans, on those threat detection assessments that our system is constantly running. So this is why when we experience something that violates our autonomy, our agency, in other words, it threatens our aliveness, connection, or identity, our system from that point on is intensely scanning for any set of circumstances, any hints, any clues that that thing is about to repeat itself. It makes sense, right? This is why if you were to experience, for example, someone stealing your purse or your laptop in a parking garage, you might suddenly develop some anxiety or some stress around parking in parking garages, around walking through parking garages. Because when someone stole your purse in a parking garage, you were unsafe without the ability to defend yourself in that moment. And so from that point on, your body begins scanning not just parking garages, although that's probably the biggest threat detection, right? But it also scans for, are my personal belongings safe? Is there someone around me who appears that they might be trying to snatch my purse? Is my purse protected, right? Is there someone around me who might be trying to distract me so that they can take advantage of me? And on and on and on it goes. Your body is constantly trying to protect you by predicting where the next threat might come from so that you can mount a defense. When I say your body is responding to a threat prediction by sending you a response, sending you a signal that danger might be on the horizon or is on the horizon, it doesn't always mean the threat is actually imminent. Sometimes it just means your body is detecting a pattern that once led to something unsafe. Sometimes we assume that we are safe if there is no threat in the immediate vicinity. If there is no physical danger in our current situation, we are safe. But that is not how your body measures safety. Remember, safety is no measurable threat exists. If you are in a parking garage or you're thinking about entering a parking garage after your purse was stolen in a parking garage, there is not going to be a scenario for your nervous system in which the likelihood of something bad happening to you does not increase when you enter a parking garage. So no measurable threat exists does not mean only present active threat. It means patterns detected that could potentially lead to a threat or a recurrence of a situation that your body has experienced as unsafe. So yes, you can be calm and not be safe. You can be safe and not be calm. Over time, when you experience safety, when safety stabilizes for you and becomes a part of your everyday life, safety will allow your body to remain in a state of calm as long as there's no measurable threat present. And this is a beautiful thing. None of us want our body to actually disengage the safety protocol, right? And this is why I say calm is not the goal. Calm is not the goal. Safety is the goal. And calm becomes a byproduct of safety. All right, that's all for today. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Safety Map podcast. If something landed here for you and you'd like to discuss it further, or if you have a question that you would like to ask, please join me in the Facebook community. The link is in the podcast notes. That is where we can collectively go deeper on today's topic. Thanks again for joining me. I'm Alyssa Decker, and I'll see you in the next episode of the Safety Map podcast.